Some families are cursed by fate. This one was cursed by its own hands. Generation after generation, murder feeding murder until the blood would not stop. Long before Troy, before any of this story's famous names, the House of Atreus was already rotten. A grandfather had fed his own son's flesh to the gods. A father had murdered his brother's children in revenge. This family did not need enemies. They made their own. Into this poisoned lineage was born Clytemnestra, a woman of fierce intelligence and iron will, who became queen of Mycenae at the side of King Agamemnon. She wanted what any queen wants: her family safe, her children protected, her power respected. The curse had other plans. Her husband was Agamemnon, king of Mycenae and commander of all the Greek armies. A proud, ambitious man who believed his crown gave him the right to decide who lived and who paid the price for his glory. That belief would soon shatter his family beyond repair. Between them stood their children, and none mattered more in this story than Iphigenia, their eldest daughter, gentle, golden-haired, barely 16, and utterly beloved by her mother. She is where this tragedy truly begins. It happened when Agamemnon assembled 1,000 ships at Aulis to sail against Troy, all to reclaim his brother's stolen wife. But the winds refused to blow. Day after day the fleet sat useless, and the soldiers grew restless, and Agamemnon grew desperate for a way to please the gods. A priest told him the goddess Artemis demanded a terrible price for favorable winds: the blood of his own daughter, Iphigenia. Agamemnon had a choice: lose his war or kill his child. He chose the war. He lied to Clytemnestra, telling her their daughter was being sent to Aulis to marry the great warrior Achilles. Overjoyed, she sent Iphigenia off with her blessing, never imagining what truly awaited her at that shore. Her own father. The winds returned that same hour. The fleet sailed for Troy in triumph. And far away in Mycenae, a mother waited for a wedding that would never come, not knowing her daughter was already dead. When the truth reached Clytemnestra, something in her broke, and something else was born in its place. Grief curdled into a cold, patient hatred. From that day, she had one true purpose. Agamemnon would pay for what he had done, no matter how long it took. For 10 long years, Agamemnon fought at Troy while Clytemnestra ruled Mycenae alone. She was no longer just a grieving mother. She governed shrewdly, held the kingdom together, and waited, letting her fury harden into a plan. She did not wait entirely alone. Into her life came Aegisthus, a cousin of Agamemnon with his own ancient grudge. His father Thyestes had once been tricked into eating his own children by Agamemnon's father. He hated the House of Atreus as much as Clytemnestra now hated her husband. Clytemnestra and Aegisthus became allies, then lovers, then co-conspirators. Together, they were far more dangerous than either alone. She had the throne's authority and a mother's righteous fury. He had cunning, patience, and nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Clytemnestra's other children were growing up in the shadow of their sister's death. Her daughter Electra never forgave her father, but as the years passed, she grew wary of her mother too, sensing something dark taking root in the palace. There was also Orestes, still a boy, the only son and rightful heir to the throne. Sensing danger closing in around her son, Clytemnestra secretly sent him away to be raised far from Mycenae, safe from whatever was coming, though she could not have guessed how that choice would one day return to destroy her. 10 years is a long time to build a plan, and a long time for a queen's grief to become something sharper than sorrow. By the time word came that Troy had fallen and Agamemnon was sailing home, Clytemnestra was ready. But Agamemnon did not come home alone. As spoils of war, he brought with him Cassandra, a Trojan princess cursed with the gift of true prophecy, and cursed further so that no one would ever believe her warnings, no matter how urgently she spoke them. As they approached Mycenae, Cassandra was overwhelmed by visions of blood already spilled inside those walls, and blood soon to come. She tried to warn Agamemnon that death waited for him at home. He did not listen. No one ever listened to Cassandra. At the palace, Clytemnestra greeted her returning husband with an elaborate, almost theatrical welcome. Warm words, rich robes laid before his feet. A queen's perfect performance of a loving wife overjoyed by her husband's homecoming. Agamemnon, arrogant and triumphant from 10 years of war, walked that crimson path into his own palace without a shred of suspicion, believing the woman before him was still the grieving wife he had left behind. He was wrong, and it would cost him everything. That evening, she led him, weary from his journey, to bathe and rest, a gesture of tender care, or so it seemed. In truth, she was leading her husband exactly where she wanted him, alone, unarmed, and utterly at her mercy. As Agamemnon settled into the water, Clytemnestra threw a heavy robe over him, tangling his arms so he could not fight back. 10 years of grief poured out of her in that single, unstoppable moment. Now she collected her debt. Cassandra, waiting elsewhere in the palace, had seen this moment already in her visions long before it happened. She walked toward her own death without struggle, almost relieved that her endless, unheeded warnings were finally, terribly proven true. Clytemnestra killed her too, ending the last living voice that might have accused her. With her husband and his captive both dead, she stepped out before the household and declared, without a trace of shame, exactly what she had done and why. Justice, she called it. A mother's righteous vengeance for a daughter murdered on an altar. And by the old logic of this cursed family, she was not wrong. But revenge in the House of Atreus never simply ends. It only changes hands. With Agamemnon dead, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus seized the throne of Mycenae together, ruling as king and queen. For a time, it seemed her long war for justice was finally won. But their rule was never as secure as it looked. Electra, her own daughter, watched her mother's new husband on that throne with open contempt, mourning her father and quietly, dangerously, keeping his memory and her hatred alive. Aegisthus, fearing the boy who had been spirited away years ago might one day return to reclaim his father's throne, treated Electra as little more than a servant, hoping to break her spirit and erase any hope of rebellion. He was right to fear him. Far away, that boy, Orestes, had grown into a young man, raised in exile but never allowed to forget who he was or what had happened to his father. And one voice never let the wound close. Electra sent word to her exiled brother again and again, refusing to let him forget his duty. To her, and to the ancient laws of their world, a son who failed to avenge his murdered father brought shame upon his entire house forever. Orestes faced an impossible choice, and it tore at him for years. His father demanded vengeance, but the one who had to die for that vengeance was his own mother. Kill her, and he would be a matricide, marked forever. Refuse, and he would be a coward who let his father's murder go unpunished. He sought guidance from the oracle at Delphi, and the god's answer was clear and terrible. He must avenge his father. whatever the cost. With that command sealed in his heart, Orestes finally returned home to Mycenae, no longer a boy, but an avenger. He did not arrive announcing himself as a king's son. Instead, he disguised himself as a stranger bringing news and slipped quietly into the palace to find his sister Electra first, the one person he trusted completely. Electra could barely believe the brother she had waited years for was finally standing before her. Together, brother and sister began planning how to reach their mother and Aegisthus before anyone realized who the stranger truly was. Orestes killed Aegisthus first, catching the usurper unarmed and unprepared, ending years of stolen rule in one swift stroke. But the hardest part of his mission still remained, and it waited just beyond the next door. Clytemnestra came running at the noise and found her son standing over her lover's body, sword still in his hand. In that instant, she understood exactly what was about to happen, and she pleaded with him, baring her own breast, reminding him she was the mother who had raised him. Orestes hesitated, torn between the mother who had loved and protected him as a child, and the mother who had murdered his father in that very palace. But the god's command still burned in him, and his father's blood still cried out unpaid. The curse claimed her too. The moment the blow landed, Orestes expected relief, justice finally served. Instead, he felt only horror, and the palace around him grew suddenly, unnaturally cold. Because matricide, even one commanded by a god, could not go unanswered. From the shadows rose the Furies, ancient spirits of vengeance older than the Olympian gods themselves, whose only purpose was to punish those who spilled the blood of their own family. They did not attack him with weapons. They hunted his mind, filling his every waking moment with visions of his mother's death, driving him from city to city, half mad with guilt and terror, unable to find a single place of rest. For years, he wandered like this, a broken man chased by monsters only he could see, punished endlessly for obeying the very command that was supposed to bring justice. It seemed the curse would simply never end. Finally, exhausted and desperate, Orestes brought his case before the city of Athens, seeking not forgiveness exactly, but judgment, a chance for someone, anyone, to finally decide whether what he did was crime or justice. There, the goddess Athena herself agreed to preside, understanding that this endless chain of blood revenge, murder answering murder, generation after generation, could never truly end unless someone broke the pattern with something new. A fair trial, judged by law instead of vengeance. The Furies argued that blood must always be paid with blood, exactly as it always had been in this family. Orestes argued that he had only obeyed the god's own command. Caught between two duties, he could never satisfy at once. When the citizen judges cast their votes and the count came out evenly split, Athena herself cast the deciding vote in favor of mercy. Orestes was acquitted, not because he was innocent of grief and blood, but because the endless cycle of revenge finally had to stop somewhere. The Furies raged at first, feeling cheated of the justice they had served since the dawn of time. But Athena offered them a new role instead of destruction. Honored guardians of Athens, protectors rather than punishers, and in time, even they accepted it. And so the curse that had haunted the House of Atreus for generations, Tantalus, Thyestes, Agamemnon, Iphigenia, Clytemnestra, and finally Orestes, was broken at last. Not by another act of vengeance, but by the invention of something the family had never once tried. Real justice, decided by law instead of blood. Clytemnestra never got to see this ending. She died believing she had simply balanced an old debt. A mother avenging a murdered daughter in the only language her cursed family had ever understood. In the end, she was both a victim of that family's violence and one of its final instruments. A woman who paid for her daughter's blood with her husband's life and paid for that, in turn, with her own.